Good afternoon, and welcome to The Modern Workplace, our weekly program dedicated to exploring the evolving dynamics of professional life. Today, we delve into a particularly pertinent and often contentious issue. Is monitoring employee communications justifiable for companies? In an era where digital tools are integral to nearly every job, the capacity for employers to observe employee activities has grown exponentially, raising complex questions about security, productivity, privacy, and trust. It's a debate that sits at the intersection of technological capability and ethical consideration. To help us navigate this multifaceted topic, we have two distinguished guests. Arguing in favor of monitoring, representing a business and management perspective, is David Chen. And offering a counter-argument focusing on ethics and employee rights is Dr. Aaliyah Khan. Welcome to you both.
Thank you, Isabel. It's a pleasure to be here. From a business perspective, the ability to monitor employee communications isn't just justifiable. In many instances, it's a fundamental necessity for responsible operations in the 21st century. We're not talking about arbitrary surveillance, but rather carefully considered measures to protect vital company interests. Firstly, let's consider security. Companies today handle vast amounts of sensitive data, customer information, financial records, and valuable intellectual property. Monitoring communication channels can be crucial in preventing data breaches, whether they stem from malicious external attacks that exploit internal vulnerabilities or, unfortunately, from internal threats. This protection is paramount. Secondly, there's the aspect of productivity and resource management. While trust is important, companies also have a right to ensure that work hours are being used effectively for work-related tasks, especially when using company-provided equipment and networks. Monitoring can help identify significant inefficiencies or misuse of company time, allowing for corrective action that benefits the overall productivity of the organization. Furthermore, legal compliance and liability are significant concerns. Many industries have specific regulations regarding data handling and communication, and monitoring can be essential for demonstrating adherence. It also helps in preventing and addressing issues like workplace harassment or other illegal activities conducted via company channels, thereby protecting both the company and its employees from serious legal repercussions. Finally, in certain customer-facing roles, monitoring can be a tool for quality control, ensuring that service standards are met and that employees are adhering to company protocols. While I understand the concerns around privacy, responsible monitoring is ultimately about safeguarding the business, its assets, and by extension, the stability and security of its workforce. It's a protective measure, not a punitive one by design.
Thank you, Isabel. And thank you, David, for laying out that perspective. However, I must argue that widespread monitoring of employee communications is generally not justifiable and often proves counterproductive, raising significant ethical and practical concerns that cannot be easily dismissed. At the heart of this issue is the fundamental right to privacy. Employees do not entirely surrender this right when they enter the workplace. A reasonable expectation of privacy should extend to their communications, even when using company systems, particularly for incidental personal use, which is often unavoidable and generally accepted in modern work life. Constant surveillance, or even the knowledge that one could be monitored at any time, inevitably leads to an erosion of trust. When employees feel they are under constant scrutiny, it fosters a culture of suspicion and anxiety, rather than one of mutual respect and collaboration. This can severely damage morale, loyalty, and overall employee engagement. Moreover, the purported benefits to productivity are often illusory. The stress of being watched can stifle creativity and critical thinking. Employees may become more focused on appearing busy, engaging in performative work, rather than on genuine productivity and innovation. This, quote, surveillance effect can actually hinder the very outcomes companies seek to improve. There's also a significant potential for misuse and misinterpretation of collected data. Communications taken out of context can lead to unfair judgments or disciplinary actions. And we cannot ignore the risk of this data being used for discriminatory purposes, regardless of stated intentions. The chilling effect is also a serious concern. Employees may become hesitant to communicate openly, report wrongdoing, or even discuss legitimate work concerns if they fear their words will be scrutinized and potentially used against them.
Thank you both for those comprehensive opening statements. David, you've emphasized security and productivity, while Dr. Khan has highlighted trust and privacy. How can companies effectively balance the need to protect their assets with respecting employee privacy? Is there a genuine middle ground, or are these fundamentally opposing interests in your view?
That's a crucial question, Isabel. I believe a balance is achievable. The security landscape today is fraught with risks. Cyber threats, data theft, industrial espionage. These are not trivial concerns. They can cripple a business. Monitoring, when implemented responsibly, is a key part of a multi-layered defense strategy. Crucially, this isn't about pervasive, indiscriminate snooping into every employee's digital life. Effective monitoring is often targeted. For instance, it might involve scanning for specific keywords related to confidential projects, monitoring access logs for sensitive databases, or focusing on external communications that could pose a security risk. It's about identifying anomalies, not reading personal emails out of curiosity. Transparency is also vital. Companies should have clear, accessible policies detailing what is monitored, why it's monitored, and how that data is used and protected. When employees understand the rationale, that it's about protecting the company and its data, and that there are rules governing this monitoring, it helps to build, not erode, a sense of shared responsibility. Using company-owned equipment primarily for work purposes also helps delineate these boundaries. The aim is to prevent significant harm, which is in everyone's interest.
David speaks of targeted monitoring and transparency, but I remain skeptical about how effectively these ideals translate into practice. The concept of scope creep is a well-documented phenomenon in surveillance. What starts as limited monitoring can easily expand over time, often without renewed, explicit consent or justification. Furthermore, while transparency in communicating policies is a basic requirement, it does not equate to genuine consent, nor does it magically negate the negative psychological impact of being watched. Knowing you are subject to surveillance, even if the reasons are explained, can still create an oppressive atmosphere and stifle authentic communication and behavior. The argument about company devices also oversimplifies the reality of modern work, especially with the rise of remote and hybrid models. The lines between personal and professional life are increasingly blurred. Employees might quickly check a personal email or send a brief personal message on a work device during a break. Does this warrant comprehensive surveillance? I believe the focus should shift from monitoring processes to evaluating outcomes and performance, fostering an environment where employees are trusted to manage their time and responsibilities effectively.
Dr. Khan, you've consistently raised the issue of the potential negative impact on company culture and employee well-being. David, from a management standpoint, are there not robust, alternative, less intrusive methods to achieve the desired levels of security and productivity that companies legitimately seek, without resorting to such direct communication monitoring?
Absolutely, Isabel. There are numerous proactive and positive strategies. Companies can invest heavily in robust cybersecurity infrastructure that protects systems without focusing on individual employee communications. Things like advanced firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and data loss prevention tools that are system-focused, not people-focused. Furthermore, developing clear ethical guidelines, providing comprehensive employee training on data security, responsible technology use, and phishing awareness is paramount. When employees understand the risks and their role in mitigating them, they become part of the security solution, not a problem to be managed through surveillance. Crucially, building a culture of trust and responsibility is more effective in the long run. Empower employees. Clearly define expectations regarding performance and conduct. and then manage based on results and adherence to those clear standards, not by scrutinizing their every digital interaction. This fosters motivation and genuine engagement, which are the true drivers of productivity.
Dr. Khan's points about training and building trust are well taken, and these are indeed important components of any responsible management strategy. No one is suggesting that monitoring should be the only tool. However, to suggest that training and trust alone are always sufficient is, I believe, somewhat idealistic, particularly when faced with sophisticated external threats or the unfortunate reality of malicious internal actors. Even the most well-intentioned and well-trained employee can make an accidental mistake that leads to a data leak. Monitoring systems can act as a crucial safety net in such instances, detecting and flagging an issue before it escalates into a major breach. They also serve as a significant deterrent. The knowledge that activities may be reviewed can discourage behavior that puts the company at risk. Moreover, when an incident does occur, be it a data breach, harassment, or theft of intellectual property, monitoring logs are often an indispensable tool for investigation. They provide a factual record that can help identify the source of the problem and take appropriate action. And let's not forget, in certain highly regulated industries such as finance or healthcare, specific types of monitoring are not just an option but a legal or regulatory requirement to ensure compliance and protect sensitive information.
In closing, I want to reiterate that while the motivations David has outlined, security, compliance, productivity, are understandable corporate goals, the widespread monitoring of employee communications is a disproportionate and ultimately damaging means to achieve them. It infringes upon the fundamental right to a reasonable degree of privacy, a right that shouldn't be entirely forfeited at the workplace door. The persistent feeling of being watched erodes the very foundation of a healthy work environment: trust. When trust is diminished, it's replaced by suspicion and anxiety, which directly impacts employee morale, reduces loyalty, and stifles the open communication and collaboration that are vital for innovation and problem-solving. Creativity doesn't flourish under a microscope. It thrives in an atmosphere of freedom and psychological safety. The supposed gains in productivity are often negated by the stress and pressure of surveillance, leading to performative work rather than genuine engagement. Furthermore, the data collected is prone to misinterpretation and misuse, creating risks of unfair treatment and discrimination. The chilling effect on legitimate communication, including the reporting of concerns, can also mask underlying problems within an organization until they become far more serious. I firmly believe that the perceived benefits of pervasive employee monitoring are significantly outweighed by these substantial harms. A work environment built on mutual trust, respect for individual autonomy, and clear expectations is demonstrably more productive, more resilient, and more innovative in the long run. Therefore, I urge companies to prioritize less invasive methods, to invest in their people through training and empowerment, and to foster a culture that doesn't feel the need to rely on constant surveillance as a default management tool.
Thank you. In my closing, I want to re-emphasize that the responsible monitoring of employee communications under specific and justified circumstances is not only a legitimate business practice, but often an essential one. We are not advocating for an Orwellian surveillance state within companies, but for practical tools to address genuine and significant risks. The primary justifications remain compelling. Protecting invaluable company assets, including sensitive data and intellectual property, from both internal and external threats is paramount. Ensuring legal and regulatory compliance is not optional. It's a requirement that protects the company from severe penalties and maintains its operational integrity. And yes, fostering a productive work environment where company resources are used appropriately is a reasonable expectation for any business. Responsible monitoring is characterized by transparency, clear policies that are communicated to all employees, and a focus on legitimate business needs rather than personal intrusion. When employees understand that monitoring is in place to protect the company, its clients, and ultimately their own jobs by ensuring the company's stability and security, It can be seen as a necessary safeguard. Failing to implement appropriate monitoring measures can expose a company to substantial risks: crippling financial losses from data breaches, significant legal liabilities, devastating reputational damage, and even threats to employee safety in some contexts. The consequences of not monitoring, in certain situations, can be far more detrimental to everyone involved than the carefully managed use of these tools. Therefore, when implemented thoughtfully, ethically, and transparently, employee monitoring serves the interests of the company as a whole, and by extension, it supports the responsible employees who are committed to its success and security. It is a tool for risk management and operational integrity in an increasingly complex digital world.
David Chen, Dr. Aliyah Khan, thank you both for such an engaging and thought-provoking discussion. You've presented your arguments with clarity and conviction, shedding light on the complexities of this issue from very different but equally valid standpoints. What emerges clearly is the inherent tension between a company's legitimate needs for security, compliance, and operational oversight, and the individual employee's fundamental right to privacy, and the importance of a trust-based work environment. There are strong arguments on both sides. Ultimately, the justifiability of monitoring employee communications may not have a one-size-fits-all answer. It seems to depend heavily on specific circumstances, the industry, the nature of the work, the existing company culture, the specific risks faced, and critically, how transparently, proportionately, and ethically such monitoring systems are designed and implemented. This is a conversation that will undoubtedly continue as technology and workplace norms evolve. Thank you to our listeners for joining us on The Modern Workplace. Good